Today's video is going to be a little bit different because we're going to be reviewing an anthology instead of a book written by one person. And the anthology, in keeping with all these fairy tale retelling books that I've been doing, is Because You Love to Hate Me. For those of you who don't know, this is an anthology of 13 stories that are written as a retelling of like a prompt, and the prompt is given by 13 different booktubers, prominent booktubers, who also have like their own little dissertation, their own little essay, as well as a companion piece to the short story that is written just to like talk about evil, the psychology of evil. So just like a full disclaimer, full warning, I don't know who any of these booktubers are. Like, I know them, like I recognize some by their usernames, but if you give me a government name, I'm not gonna know who they are. Prompt is: the grandson of an evil matriarchal dictator who tried to rule over the universe wants to follow in her footsteps and accidentally loses his temper, killing his sibling in a game of chess. The prompt itself is pretty interesting because, I mean, you could go either way. You could go in the direction of gender, which Ahdieh did. You could go in the direction of like anger and how it builds up over time, or wanting to be acknowledged in comparison to that sibling that everybody seems to love all the time, I guess. The trouble with it is that it's kind of tricky to show that kind of thing in such a short window of narrative, all that build up, all those years of resentment and bitterness. I think that's why the execution of this story kind of fell flat to me. It didn't feel as if it really convinced me of the sibling rivalry and the culmination of that. Jack and the Beanstalk meets Phalaris of Agrigento. I don't know what that is. Agrigento? I thought this was well done. Okay, so this one was Jack and the Beanstalk, but told in the perspective of a giant. Specifically a giantess who's trying to come to terms with her identity and her bloodlust as a giant. And it's super interesting to me because she basically finds her self-fulfillment, her self-actualization through the betrayal of her friend Jack. Like, at first she is lost, she doesn't know much about what she thinks about her heritage and stuff like that, and then she meets Jack, who is a human. They become friends, but towards the end she realizes, oh, like, this is what I'm meant to be. This is who I'm meant to be. This is what I'm meant to do as a giant. Like, and she betrays him and cooks him up. And that's the story. You know those stories where they have someone who's a predator and someone who's like the prey, usually becoming friends, and then it's like, can this relationship last? When you know one cannot like fully put off the bloodlust that one has over the other. And so it's just kind of interesting that in the end, no, like, that is the way of nature. And you just can't help but feel like, I guess it was coming, but dang, that was crazy. A modern day mashup of the King Arthur legend and Persephone Hades myth. It's told in a series of text messages from Guinevere to Arthur to Lancelot, etc., etc. And here they're like teenagers, so from Gwen to Art to Lance and all that. So that was interesting. When I finished reading the whole thing and I saw the prompt, I was kind of like, oh, Okay. That's why. That makes sense why they kept referencing Persephone and Hades, and I was like, this is not your story, bro. You live in Camelot. Canterlot. Ooh, y'all about to clown me as a My Little Pony stan. So basically, the story goes, King Arthur, Art, and Queen Guinevere, Gwen, they are the it couple in school. They are homecoming king and queen, whatever, right? But Gwen has a secret. She is actually texting Art's friend, Lance, and secretly talking to him, you know, the way young people use it nowadays. She actually enjoys talking to him, I think. I'm not sure, because she's mean. She corrupts him in a way. She corrupts him to leave Art. She's the Hades in this instance, whereas Lance is the Persephone who falls down into the underworld of social pariahism. I don't know if text messages was the way to go for this story. I'm familiar with Mr. Chainani. Mr. Chainani's work. I know, I've read A School for Good and Evil. I actually read it. Yeah. I can't make a video on it because I can't remember a thing. I have watched the movie, but that's another thing. I am aware of his work and I'm familiar with how he writes fairy tales in a way that seems juvenile and teen-like, but weaves in some bit of darkness in it, some bit of human ugliness, humans being mean to each other. But I don't know, I just felt like this was very high school drama, which is the point, but it felt underdeveloped in terms of the discussion of evil and what is considered evil. If we had talked about the perception of this couple and the way that people perceive Lancelot as like an evil person, oh my gosh, how dare he do that to his best friend, but then you see like the behind the scenes and it's Guinevere the entire time doing this, maybe, but we didn't really see the public opinion of them. We saw their primary reactions to each other, and it was just kept between the three of them, but that was it. This story felt like I was going through someone's DMs and not in a good way. A young Moriarty. That's it. That's it. Which I feel like could have been so interesting if we didn't have a romance. Sherlock Holmes and Jim Moriarty. This is fanfic about the two of them, except Sherlock in this case is Shirley, a girl. Gender bend. Shirley Holmes. Sherlock Holmes is somebody who walks on the right side of the road, who's very like straight-laced and all that. And Jim Moriarty is Mr. Bad Boy himself incarnate. He's like, why? Don't you like to contemplate why people tell you to do stuff? Don't you like to contemplate why you do what you do? It's so funny because it gives Wattpad. It's like a villain origin story, except it's a rivalry origin story where it's like, oh, we used to kiss each other and make out back in school until James, whoever he is, James Moriarty, he betrayed her in some way or decided to turn to the dark side in some way, and she was like, oh, okay, I'm coming for you now. Like that whole romance line between Sherlock, Shirley, whoever, and James Moriarty, it felt very much teen drama. Once again, we just have these teens back to back, and I know most of these writers are YA writers, but like this felt so, it did not discuss evil in the way that it promised to discuss evil, I guess. Like they tell you, we're gonna break it down, we're gonna break down villains for you, and we're gonna talk about it. Okay, talk about it then. Talk about what villains look like at a young age. What kind of formative memory makes a villain? Do not bring a villain who is already formed, hardened by their own ideals and their own grievances against society, and then have that person engage with the protagonist of their story in a way that doesn't build the rivalry faithfully to the original source material. Because I don't know, if a boy broke my heart, I wouldn't be coming for him like this. This is not the... If y'all know Sherlock Holmes and James Moriarty in the originals, the original, not the BBC, the original stuff, it's not the same as somebody being scorned by their lover and trying to now right their wrongs and hunt them down because they were accidentally misled, misguided by this very handsome, very alluring stranger with his silly little opinions. No, it was not that. It just felt off, to tone deaf to the original source material, but also the prompt and the premise, there you go, the premise of this whole anthology in general. So that one was really off the mark, but I had fun reading it. That was so funny. The prompt was a dark sorcerer's motives for seeking immortality or omnipotence. I don't know about this one. This one was kind of strange to me. I don't think I really had an opinion on this because I don't remember an opinion on this, to be honest. That's why I can't say anything about it. It is basically Harry Potter, but dark. I guess there's people learning magic, people learning how to cast and all that. This one wasn't as memorable to me just because I think it felt very, towards the end, very mustache twirly, very villainy, but villainy in a cartoon sense. The author of this story in particular went for a power-hungry kind of narrative, if I remember correctly. Again, it wasn't as memorable to me, so I'm not sure, but they went for a power-hungry narrative, and that felt kind of simple to me. There are so many things that could motivate a person to seek power for themselves. We could have had something like humiliation, something where they felt very powerless against people who wronged them in any sort of way. So they felt like they had to gain power in order to one-up them, in order to get back at them, their vengeance. Vengeance is a good motivator. Vengeance is. Power hungriness, not so much, just because it doesn't say much about the person except that they're ambitious. I don't know, this one, I'm not too sure why I can't remember much detail upon it. Again, maybe it's very simple in that respect. In regards to motivation, so it literally faded in my mind. I'm not sure if this is correct. Y'all can correct me if you want, but I think that's what I gathered from what I read a long time ago. What if the sea witch had previously been in the Little Mermaid's shoes but decided to kill the love interest and turned back into a mermaid instead? It kind of disappointed me. Yeah, no, I'm not gonna lie, it did disappoint me. It's supposed to be Ursula's story, and how her origin story basically, and how she became a sea witch because she was trying to get the attentions of Mr. Prince Triton himself, Prince at the time because he's young, and she turned to dark magic for that. But then it was revealed that it was dark magic and she was bullied for it, and she was like, you know what? Ostracized, bullied, threatened to her life. I'm not sure. I think all that and above. She decided, okay, if they wanna see me as a monster, I'm gonna become a monster. I don't know. Me personally, I didn't like the prompt as well. I think the execution and the prompt really let me down. Just because, okay, there's something like of nuance that's kind of missing within the prompt itself, and that translates very badly, very poorly actually, into the actual execution of the short story. So I did not like it because it was basically girl meets boy, girl wants to impress boy, boy bullies her, and she becomes dark. She wants to join Prince Triton and his gang. She wants to be a part of their group because she wants to belong somewhere. But that belonging, that sense of maybe I want to be something more, felt so much like high school. I want to be a part of their clique, mean girls, you can't sit with us, etc., that it just did not deliver in that respect at all. Medusa, go. Medusa, go. And what Cindy Pond did was retell Medusa, but in an Asian setting. I have no exact thoughts about this one, just because it retold the story for sure. It did retell everything very faithfully. There was no subversion, but that was also, I could blame the prompt as well, because all it said was Medusa, go. It did what it was supposed to. It did a good job of what it was supposed to. The setting itself was also descriptive. I could see and imagine. Other than that, it was really just Medusa, the story. So I have nothing to say about that. Hades wakes up after being unconscious at the bottom of a well in Ireland. The story is basically a person, I think it's a boy, wakes up at the bottom of the well, goes out, death follows the person because the person is death, and then goes back in, and then like a different person goes back into the well, I think. They become, this new person becomes death. Death is just different people, etc., etc. Me, personally, I didn't think this was villainous exactly. I don't think this was. I think it was more a force of nature that's inevitable. It just felt very, very atmospheric, introspective about death, I guess. Kind of fairy tale-like in some respect, because of how the language itself is kind of whimsical. Not whimsical in a like, oh my gosh, so silly type of way, but it's got that bit of surrealism, that bit of like detachment from the reality, and also the fact that there's like an entire person that just pops out of the well and whoop-de-doo, you know, that's death. I have no qualms about this one, despite it not being very villainous, just because it also delivered in its writing and its description of death and the way that it makes you feel a certain way about it. So I guess it did a good job. Earl Queen retelling in 19th century London. The story goes like this. The fairy queen, Earl Queen, whatever you want to call her, she kidnapped the princess of England, Princess Alice. She kidnapped her. The queen was, you know, obviously upset, and they basically had a deal where the Earl Queen would release Alice in exchange for free pickings for any girls in England. So basically, this Earl Queen is a serial kidnapper of just girls, and she just takes them and plucks them out of their home. And Isaac is the brother of our titular character, Marigold, and he's actually the protagonist. He goes out, tries to find Marigold and tries to bring her back home, but realizes that Marigold and the rest of the girls that are kidnapped and being there, actually enjoy the Earl Queen's court. The Earl Queen is protecting them instead of hurting them like everybody believed that she was. This book felt interesting in the way that it talks kind of about the gendering back in 19th century London, and the way that women would have been safer in the court of a paranormal creature than among humans, other humans as well. So that commentary was super interesting. I feel like this is really getting into the heart of what this anthology was all about. So I really liked this story. And the prompt reads, a female teen crime lord concealed by a mask. Yes, it is a female teen crime lord concealed by a mask. She uses forget me serum, and she does this for people. She does this all the time. This is her thing. I don't know. This felt, yeah, okay. Like, if the big thing, the big conflict, I guess, is like a deal or something that's going on. It just didn't feel interesting to me. It sounded like one of those story POVs that they would make in those YouTube comments or something, or a little one shot on AO3. It just felt like that. Like, it wasn't any big thing. The prompt goes, a psychopath in a futuristic setting. So I didn't get that. It just felt like very grounded within our current time, but I did get psychopath. It was so, oh my gosh, guys, like, I liked it. I was actually pleasantly surprised by it, because at first the language and everything, it reminds me of those very, you know, in those early 2010s, like maybe 2014, 2013, where the main character would address the audience directly and go like, you know, my life is a bag of worms and a can of beans and all that, and I'm so quirky. YA books that are similar, books like Me, Earl, and the Dying Girl or something, I think that was the title. Books like that, John Green, whatever he wrote, similar. It's a similar tone. So at first I was like, oh, okay, we're gonna get another teen drama thing, which we kind of got, but it was interesting because the narrator himself, what is his name? The narrator, I don't think I know his name. Well, I'm not aware of who the narrator is, but the narrator hates this one guy, hates him to death. He hates this one guy. His name is Stephen Campbell. Yes, Stephen Campbell. But here's the thing, this narrator, he believes that he has the power to will people to death. Like, he thinks he just has to wish upon someone's death and it will happen. Kind of Death Note-y, yes, but Death Note actually dealt with, like, you know, the morality of, is it right to kill criminals when the criminals don't receive their full sentences and they're like scumbags? And this is actually the failure of the justice system, etc., etc. This one is more like actual, I want him dead, I want him gone. The psychopath in question, I guess, the person himself, he already believes his power is real because the people that has bothered him before, that he's just wished death upon very casually, have died. They have all died, according to him. Again, he's kind of an unreliable narrator, and I'm kind of into it. He keeps wishing death on Stephen Campbell, like actual wishing death, and like the entire time you read about Stephen Campbell and you know, you hear him talk and you see him talk to other people and you see the way he acts and you're like, this kid is just literally a himbo. Like, he's just a kid. Like, you just see his like unadulterated hatred for this man. And towards the end, he's like, you know what? And if wishing death upon him isn't gonna work, then it's fine. I could just give my powers a little physical push, and like, that's how it ends. A very ominous ending of like, is he gonna take matters into his own hands now that he's been frustrated? I'm gonna make some people mad. I'm gonna make some people so mad. This is what Catcher in the Rye tried to be, but couldn't. Beauty and the Beast, Suitor's Revenge. So, just to give you a rundown of what the plot is, Beauty and the Beast, but the beauty is the beast, and the suitor, Gaston, is the one hunting the beast, and he's like, I've been in love with Beauty this entire time, I've been hating the beast, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I need to reflect on myself. Do I have any personal opinions about this one? No, not really. I think Gaston as a villain already is kind of weak in the villain factor. I feel like, yes, okay, he is a misogynist in France, but so did that one kid, Frodo. Yeah, from The Hunchback of Notre Dame. Yeah, he was disgusting. I hated him. Visceral reaction, terrible. I wanted him gone, off my screen, out of my life. And he is also like a realistic character as well. How come Frodo put more of a reaction in me than Gaston did? Because Gaston, yes, he was a narcissist and all that. And I'm not like belittling anybody who's dealt with a narcissist. However, he was also goofy-fied, silly-fied. He was narcissistic in a way that was funny, rather than narcissistic in a way that was detrimental. The only detrimental thing was that he went after the beast to kill the beast, but then there's also the whole point of prejudice itself. So part of his narcissism gets kind of drowned out by mob mentality in the way that they're not all narcissists as well. So they just have a prejudice against the beast, whereas he is really just butthurt that Belle won't accept his advances. There's a way to write him creepy that wasn't written creepy according to Disney directors. Maybe they just wanted it to be consumable for kids, otherwise he would just be too creepy. But we could have had that here. We did not. Yes, go Gaston in your character development. Yes, put aside your prejudices. But again, it all just felt too convenient for the sake of a romance line. Probably because the authors themselves hail from YA origins, and YA tends to have a love interest no matter what. Deep conflict, the genre, the time of day, that's just something to expect, but we could have done better. We really could have. And the prompt was gender flipped God of War. I liked this one too. This one, what to say about this one? It follows the gender flipped God of War, Sarah, and it starts from present day and how everybody's reeling from this disaster of this phenomena of violence everywhere. I don't know, it's spreading. It spreads among people and they're just killing each other and like hurting each other and stuff like that. And they're like, what is this? And they're like, it's Sarah. She is the one at the center of all this violence. She just goes, and wherever she walks, there is violence. And so they get down to business and interrogate the parents, but also try to find out what Sarah's home life was like, how she became this way. She is a strange girl. She's kind of different. There's something off about her. Her parents are scared of her. And she has a sister named Callie. Callie is mommy and daddy's darling dearest. And Sarah is often pushed to the side in favor of Callie, who is the normal sibling, and so the loved sibling. Sarah tries her best to be normal like Callie, but the more she tries to be normal, the sicker, the worse she gets. It physically hurts her to be normal. Where Sarah waned, Callie would wax, I guess, in a way. Where Sarah would weaken, Callie would strengthen. And so one day, Sarah gets sick. No one knows what to do with her, and later Callie dies, and afterwards Sarah gets better. I think that's the implication, is that as when Callie was eliminated, when Callie was gone, nothing no longer held back Sarah. And so it's interesting because the story is told in the perspective of their mother, who is spiraling. She's trying her best to make Sarah as normal as possible, to make her like Callie, to fix her marriage as well. The husband himself, he can't stand to think about his daughters without being mad, because Sarah is the god of war. So he just, whenever he thinks about her, he's mad, he's angry. He can't do it. Now that Callie's gone and eliminated, Sarah no longer has a cap on her power. And so she goes out and just wreaks havoc. She just decides to destroy it all and abandon everything. It just feels like magical realism. It feels so much like this is someone's story of what they've experienced in their household, but you just twist it with a little bit of fantasy. And I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed also the unleashing as well. It felt cathartic, but then you're like, wait, but this is catharticism for a terrible thing, a terrible phenomenon, but it's her. She has just as much place to be here as anybody else. Like, this is nature working. That's basically it. That's all my opinions for today. Like and subscribe.